people are joining, I'll just get us started. So we are here today for the Spend Control Masterclass, and I'll hand over to the wonderful people that are joining me in a second to take us through the experts. A few bits and pieces. The session will be recorded today, so we'll be able to share this recording out afterwards. And also, if you do have any Q&A, as always, please pop them into the Q&A chat button that you'll see at the bottom of your screen, so that we can answer those for you at the end. So again, this masterclass today is brought to you by Wheel. So we're the team behind the CFO community. A little bit about what we do. So the first part of what we do, I guess, is around the payments and spending components. So we help businesses with things like issuing virtual company cards, managing reimbursements, managing bill payments, and also the subscription management. And then on the management side, so with all of that spending data brought into your Wheel platform, into your Wheel account, we help with the management side with things like expense reports, our real-time transactions feed, our customizable workflows, and our budget controls and accounting integrations. Without further ado, I'm super excited to be handing off now to our three wonderful hosts who will be talking with you today. I probably should have introduced myself as well. So I'm Katie and I'm part of the Wheel team, and I'll just be helping MC this conversation today. I'm definitely not bringing any of the brains or expertise on this topic. But to kick us off, I'll hand over to our wonderful hosts to introduce themselves. And I'd like to start with either sharing your most bizarre expense that you've seen come through that was actually, maybe if you don't have an example of that, something cheeky that you've seen somebody try and bring through, which was against company policy. And I might start with Tyler, just because you're at the top of my screen.
Yeah, I had an interesting one. It was a fishing membership back in like 2008. And the CEO was trying to give some benefits to his favorite partner. And he was like, just go ahead and put this fishing benefit through, or fishing membership through, which, got you guided fishing tours around the Melbourne countryside. And I kind of had to politely tell them, yes, that works, but it's got FBT on it. And so I was like, it's just not worth doing. And also, if we do that, then it has to go in the report to all the other partners. And that one got me kicked out of the office. So it was part of the fun.
That's so funny. Look, you gave it a crack. It could have been great.
I think we paid it, but I just put it to his drawings account.
Yeah. So funny. And how about you, Brie?
Yeah, so one of our founders holds the world record for the world's largest toga party. Anyway, so in celebration of the 10th anniversary of that, we decided to hold a toga party, but no one told finance. So I was getting all these messages saying, hey, Brie, why are there these transactions for 200 meters of white fabric? Like, why have you bought so much white fabric? Like, are you guys sewing something? Like, what's going on? But it was togas to celebrate the 10th anniversary of our founder holding that world record. So it was a funny one, but totally approved, and was all part of the plan.
That's hilarious. That's so funny. And what about you, Chloe?
The one that I always think of is we had an expense come through from the marketing team actually for a luxury watch. I think it was Cartier or something like that. It was above board. It was actually for a competition they were running to drive results from some of our partners. Came out of the marketing budget. I did get the tax team to have a look at it to see it's all okay. But yeah, so that was an interesting one. Really good. I wanted to be part of that competition, but
Oh, so good. So funny, the things that get through. I'll just start sharing my screen so I can see everyone's faces. Cool. So without further ado, we'll jump straight in. I wanted to start things off maybe on a bit more of the positive side. And I know we've talked a lot about culture in previous masterclasses and webinar sessions. This idea of a really great, creating great company culture when it comes to spending. So I guess maybe we'll start with you again, Tyler. In a company that's really sort of nailed this, what are the hallmarks of a great company spending culture?
Yeah, I can really reference like a recruitment company when I was CFO for, and it had a culture of good expenditure, but with reason, and no one was like above exception. And this company had like breakfasts were provided, and this is kind of many years before lockdowns and all these flexible workplaces were around and more of the benefits. And so a lot of people would come to the office, have really good coffees, have cereal and toast and avocados and all these types of things for breakfast. And we as a finance team, we could question anything right up to the chairman. And she was, if we were out for drinks, she wasn't expensing drinks. She wasn't doing anything like that. It was all like, hey, if I want to buy someone a drink, I'll do that personally. For us, it was around like the ability to be transparent as a business. No expenses are kind of hidden, and also like no one was above being asked. And if asked, everyone knew that I had the power of the chairman at my side, because she upheld the laws as well. Well, not laws, but upheld like the intent of the rules as well.
Yeah, awesome. And Bree, I know you've kind of touched on this as well previously in our conversations.
Yeah, I think internally at Tanda, we've kind of set cultural norms around spending and what people can spend and what they know that they can spend. So I think that we've been very clear at the outset around, what team members have certain limits, what is allowed to be within those limits, and then just kind of set a tone of, knowing that there's a very fast feedback loop with finance. So you know what I mean? That there's really clear transparency, so people can see what people are spending money on. There's no kind of hidden black box around that. I think that really, really helps, because what it means is that, people know what their limits are, stay within their limits. But it also means that, we've set this kind of cultural norm around spending where people can move quickly. We don't have any big delays around approvals or approval matrices or anything like that. So we've kind of set this culture where people know what's an acceptable expense, people know what their limits are, but then it also allows them to move really, really quickly. And, if they need to buy something when they're with a client, or they need to, buy a software subscription that's within their limit, they can do that really, really quickly and know that they're not going to be slowed down. And I think that's like a really important part of the culture that we've set, is around that speed to move, but within acceptable limits and acceptable boundaries.
I like that. The speed to move is so important. Like you cannot, as a finance team, you cannot hinder business because you're worried about a $30 expense. Yeah, that's really cool. I haven't thought of it that much.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, because it's kind of like feedback. It's both sides, because I think part of sometimes what I've seen in the past where this transparency isn't there is that they don't want to come to finance because they're like, you're going to block it, you're going to stop what I do, so I'm not going to come to it at all. And that just creates a really negative culture, because then they'll spend it anyway, that you're chasing them back, and then this could take a month or two later. So this speed is so important. And especially what Tyler said, like, I think at Will anyway, it's very transparent that everyone has the same kind of, like, if you're purchasing or spending on something legitimate, everyone's in the same boat. So it's not like, oh, just because this person's in the executive team, they can go out and, go shopping and buy whatever they want. Whereas if you're, someone a bit more junior, you don't have those special treatment. It's kind of like everyone's treated the same. If it's a legitimate business expense and it's for, driving business purposes, then it's going to be okay. And I think that, like, having that overall culture for everyone to understand is really important.
Yeah, that's great. I think that equality piece is really important, knowing that the intern is held to the same rules as the CEO. And I guess, so maybe thinking about, if we know that's what great looks like, how can businesses start to think about driving these cultural changes around spending? Bri, I can see you nodding. I might hand to you first.
It's an interesting one. I think that the thing around when you have these culture norms and you have these very clear limits and you have that speed to move, I think it's easy to move limits up and down for certain things. And I think, that's a really important thing that people know that, hey, you know, I'm a sales team member. This is my monthly budget. So they know what that is and they keep to it, and they're kind of accountable to that number, and that they know that they're accountable to that number. And because people in the team feel like they have ownership over that, you know what I mean? It kind of drives this situation where I don't need to tell them what they can or can't spend, or need to set a budget, because they know, hey, that's what their limit is, and that's what they're allowed to spend in that month. So I think it's really helpful in that, you know, that side of things. And then when people want to, you know, go over their limit, they know that they have to ask, and they know that they might be told no. So I think it's because people own their limits, and we give people that flexibility. It means people feel responsible for that number. If that makes sense.
I've had a really interesting one on that. Like, I've worked in a couple sales environments, but also like law firms and such. Yep. And I've never set limits per person or per team on spending, right? Which has been interesting, because I've always been a fan of actuals over budget, right? You know, and we all know as accountants, like budget, you know, I'm pulling best guess out of thin air, or with some maths and logic. And I kind of learned this in the law firms, that, you know, like it's more about that. Well, for the law firms where you've got more trusted kind of people that they know if they spend $50,000 on a meal, they're going to be in trouble, right? Like we try to set like parameters. And it depends on the environment. Like, I've definitely had some lawyers that would push it, you know, and you had to kind of come back to things, but they never had like a cap. And to touch on that culture piece, I used to advertise this a lot, like in verbal communications, and I used to provide like a lot of examples. And I used to kind of on like public forums, you know, like this used to be like Yammer back in the day.
Yeah.
I used to be like, hey, someone just tried to, put through 5, and this is a true story, 5 bottles of Moet Chandon when they took a vacation clerk out for their welcome coffee. And I was like, nice try. Better luck next time. This is coming off your wages, you know? And like those types of things, like you've got to constantly communicate what is okay and what is not okay, and then have flex on, you know, like the people that you trust, and then have like a bit of an iron fist on the people that you know are open to spending. I was going to call them me's, but you know, like some of them are a bit more bougie in the way they want to spend. You just have to know those people, and that they're going to Nobu. They're not going to the local coffee shop to meet those clients. And that's, you know, as long as you understand that how that relates to revenue and how that relates to business growth or profit, that's how I try to make the culture. So the finance team actually has to understand the connection. You can't just be a raw person, and then you have to communicate often.
And I think it also helps to have software that helps you do those things, because then you remove that grind, right? Because if we're talking about culture, it's all about people and how your interactions. So if you're taking that, the software helps you block that spend. It's not you physically, and they have to come to you to ask for more. So it just changes the dynamic a little bit. So it's not so much like, I'm going to spend it, you deal with it, you chase me. It's I'll come to you. So I think having the technology and the different software available now to help us with that, it really does make the job easier and does help drive culture as well. I genuinely think that.
I guess like flipping it a little bit from being everybody versus finance, it's kind of sharing that burden a little bit of everyone's responsible, and everyone has to be in line with the system.
We have an interesting rule is in our finance teams, or whenever we're doing an installation, we say, are you comfortable to stand in front of the board and explain why you spent this money? You, not me. Right? And if they say yes, I'm like, cool, that's fine, right? But if you can't, in front of the board, you know, experienced people, I'll be in there, like, you know, the CEO will be in there. That's kind of the rule. So I often use that word. I was like, if I put you in front of the board and you had to explain it, would you be comfortable? Because that's my job. That's what I have to do. And that's been a big changer of conversations for me. You know, when people are really defensive. So I put them a bit in my shoes on that. Yeah, which is quite cool.
Yeah, that's a really great tool, I think to use. And I guess that probably leads into the next area, which was going to lead into sort of setting a sound expense policy. And I know expense policies is something we talk about a lot. And I know, it can sometimes sit between the really unofficial policies, which is, you might hear the phrase spend it as your own money, to really sort of rigid policies, which is like, here is your 100-page booklet around how you can spend company money. I guess maybe from your perspective, what are the sort of essential ingredients to think about in an expense policy, and how do you ensure that it's got that successful uptake when introducing it? Chloe, I might start with you on this one because I know this is a passion point of yours.
I think the top line has to be simple and easy to understand. No one wants to spend 30 minutes reading an expense policy. It's just got to be, it can be as easy as a 1-pager, 2-pager max. And then if someone goes, can I spend this? Have a look, done. That's number one. And then communication as well. So then there's no point of having a policy in your, company wiki somewhere and nobody knows how to find it. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows, where it is, or if you even have one. So I think those are the two things that's like the key.
Yeah, the simple is the key. Like as in our prep for this, it reminded me of my 80-page Deloitte policy back in 2004. It's called DPay policy, and it like you needed to be a lawyer to understand it. Like, it just wasn't well written. So when I got my first chance to write my own, Chloe, I was the same. I was 2 pages. I always did flow charts on who decides what. So the marketing person goes to here, then after marketing, it goes to me. And then if it's above $10,000, it went to the chairman, So I made, I like pictures, pictures are really easily absorbed, much faster than words, I think. But I'm really careful on travel. Travel is where people go bananas. And if you ever get a disgruntled employee and they're a traveling employee, Bree, you and I were talking about being auditors in our time. The amount of auditors that I've seen just swipe left, right, and center. You really have to be careful on that. And you almost can't write in a policy, don't be an idiot. But you need to have something about reasonableness there, about reasonable expenditure and necessary. A good example would be if you're an auditor and you're 4 weeks in a place, you might stay there the weekend. If you're in a hotel, they might start to put laundry expenses through. And we know a pair of socks is $5 at a hotel
per
right?
item.
Exactly, right? So you need to have those little things about reasonableness, expenditure, and then examples, e.g. long-term stays, hotel laundry is not acceptable, right? Those things, actually, you need to make it relatable, not just strict rules.
Tyler, it's interesting you talk about the relatable side of things. One of the things about Tanda is, because we've grown quite quickly from 20 staff to almost 70 staff in Australia, there's a lot of pushback on policy. People don't like policy internally. They feel like it slows us down. You know what I mean? People don't like rules, if that makes sense. So we talked about that cultural piece. I think what's really important around when you do set policy is that it has to fit in with the cultural norms that you've set. And I think as we've grown quickly at Tanda, that's something that we've been able to do really well, is have these cultural norms around spending. And then as we've gotten bigger and needed to put in an expense policy, they just fit into what the cultural norms are. And what that means is people remember the policy. They're not having to go and to refer to it all the time. But you don't, we talked about, finance team. You don't want the finance team to be the enemy. And I think that's also really important in the policy. It's not about people getting into trouble. It's about enabling people to make the right choices when they're spending company money. And I think, it's an interesting one. All companies have the rule, no personal transactions on your work card. Pretty obvious one. Again, cultural norm here at Tanda, people know that. And it's gotten to the point now that when people accidentally do put personal transactions on their corporate cards, they will message me out of hours to be like, oh my goodness, Bree, sorry, I put $10 when I was at drive-through on Macca's on my personal card. What do I do? It's become, because finance aren't scary, it's become like the policy is that people are really, really open and will tell you when they've made a mistake, and they know that they're not going to get a slap on the wrist. It's like a very easy, we'll deduct it from your pay. And I think that's really important about policy too, is it's not policing, it's enabling.
And I let one slide. If someone puts through $30, if they're like, sorry, this was a personal lunch or it was a personal Uber, because you often tag your work card to your Uber. This is a personal Uber. For $30, if that person's like good to work with, pro finance, revenue generating, it's more admin time for them and me to operate. I'll just be like, look, don't worry about it. I'll just kick that to like a non-deductible expense. So it hits our P&L, disappears, but I'm not deducting it for tax. There's no GSTs. It's totally fine, right? And those types of things are just a really easy way to create that relationship. Chloe, coming back to your points about the relationship. You're not the police, right? And they also know that, they know you're watching, but you also know that, like, hey, you get one chance, right? I use the word nice try as well. If someone puts through something funky, I'm like, yeah, nice try. That's a good one. I haven't seen that before.
And I think it's kind of like every company has their different culture, and you just kind of know, like the cohort you have. Like I started an audit as well, right? And I can just imagine if you didn't have a policy, sometimes we hear people like, I remember like the directors were like, you have a limit, but it's not a target, guys. Like you don't have to always hit that, whatever you have, right? Yeah. So if you're in a place like that where you have, a lot of people coming through, and if there's no like set policy, it probably won't work. But like say for Tanda, it works because of, the culture you have. So it's really important to keep that in mind, to tailor it to what your kind of the cards you dealt.
100%. The other thing, we kind of have a rule at Tanda is that just because someone does something wrong once, you shouldn't make a policy about it. And I think some companies and some finance teams have a bit of a culture of that, like, oh my goodness, someone did something bad one time, let's write a 5-page, policy document. It's really important that, that's not necessarily going to stop it. People do make mistakes, and often they're honest. And if you just talk to that employee and set that cultural norm, you don't need the 5-page policy because someone made a mistake one time.
I changed a 5,000 people law firm once, their casual day policy, because I wore shorts to work, and changed the policy, and it was 2 pages. So got some feelings on that one.
That's so funny. I think this probably leads quite nicely into our next point. We've talked a bit around, I guess, putting the systems in place, or I guess starting to regulate in a way that takes it away from finance. In terms of automating the policy, because it's one thing, I guess, to introduce it, and then and obviously setting that cultural expectation really helps. But to take that work away from the finance person, maybe having to stay on top of it or constantly chasing it, what are some of the ways that the policy or expense management can be automated? And I guess what are the benefits that you see from that automation?
I like the notification options, like it's not valuable for a CFO's time or a financial controller's time, or even an accounts payable person time to following up, right? So just like, hey, this is yours, like this is your job, do it well. I don't have the information. That's been the biggest change for me in the last 5 years, like just not having to chase people to do something. A notification on their phone, I know this isn't a Wheel sales, cool, but like when Wheel tells me the next day, hey Tyler, you forgot to code this transaction, I'm like, oh, it's good, like, because if I'm getting that, then my team's getting that as well. That part I absolutely love.
Yeah, awesome.
It's interesting. The notification piece is massive. It means that, we use Wheel internally. It means that, me and my team aren't having to message people. Like Wheel does that for us. The other big thing we find is it really makes the AP side of our end of month really fast. So if we have an automated system where people can upload the receipts in real time and know what those transactions are in real time, we can get the AP side of end of month done in days. I know if my receipts aren't in by the 2nd of the month, I will be in trouble with the rest of the finance team. People know that, you know, and it means that part of our end of month is not arduous at all. And I think that's a really important thing. You know, it shouldn't take you a long time to find receipts and get those into the system. It should be fast and real time.
And you're not accruing those like credit card expenses like we used to have to do in the day. I used to be accruing a couple $100,000 of, you know, credit cards that I knew were coming on the 5th that I had to pay on the 15th. And it's just real time live reporting. Like it's where we all are now. Like I reckon month end's going to die in the next 10 to 20 years. You know, like it's like it's live reporting. Like sales reporting's already live, debtors reporting's already live. You know, like time reporting's already live. We're not that far away from like, you know, month end becoming like more of a tax obligation. If you look at STP, you know, STP is moving into a live kind of play. You know, so that you're right, Bree. Like that play and that speed this is just one step in that direction of adding more value as a finance team and providing real financial information at a live date rather than a month end, quarter end, year end date.
I think it just speeds up the more mundane type tasks, you know, chasing people, AP, like those are the things that has to be done and very important, but also very time consuming. And if you can take that away, because the system does it for you, you can do the much more interesting value add stuff. And, you know, that's what I find much more interesting and like to do and analyze. And I think that's the biggest benefit with having these automations.
It's also, you know, I was reflecting, laughing before I came and joined the webinar. I opened up my desk and, you know, my drawer's full of old corporate cards from different banks that, you know, like we don't know, like you just like, are they cancelled? Are they still live? When you put in a system like Will, you don't have that. You're not having to talk to the bank to say, hey, I've got a new staff member, can you send me a card? And then they say, well, they've got to go down to the branch and do, you know, an ID verification, and then changing limits. You know, you don't have to get on the phone to your bank manager and say, hey, I want to change these limits. You can do it in real time. You know, someone can say, hey, Bree, I'm going to a conference next week. You know, I have these expenses that I expect to have. Are you able to up my limit? And we'll say, yep, we can do that straight away. For the week, they have a higher limit and then we can bring it straight back down. You know, we don't have to talk to a bank. We're not reliant on post. You know, it's just so much faster.
You know,
I lost days. I had 400 credit cards once at a law firm. And one guy lost his in New York, and I had to try to get another card to him in New York. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, you know.
Oh man.
This is the worst part of finance like 10 years ago.
I'm one of so I was like packing up some of my old stuff and I found my corporate card from when I was in the San Fran office. So I still have that somewhere. I'm sure they cancelled it because this one, but I still have it.
To give it a go, Chloe, see if it still works.
Buy me a coffee.
Just supposed to buy something from Amazon.
Yeah, it like when you automate these things, it just makes it so much faster. And also, again, people really like the finance team because they'll go, oh my goodness, the finance team was able to do this thing for me really, really quickly. And then again, you build that trust, you build that rapport. And the finance team isn't an adversary or you know, policing department.
Yeah, like our business installs systems, you know, and we help install Xero and Microsoft and all these fun ones, right? But like the one that wows people, honestly, is our wheel. You know, like I set my team up with a wheel card. I give them $500. I tell them that all coffees, as long as they're drinking at the office, are paid for by the company. And they're like, this is done, set up. And I'm like, yeah, like this is the new norm, you know. And it really, I know, Caitlin, we're going to talk about security as well, but like the security of it. Like I had you know, two of my favorite team members, you know, move on to higher and bigger, better positions, which was sad, part of the deal. Yeah, I turned their wheel card off in like, you know, a minute worth of work, which, you know, Bree, to your point, that was a phone call, a form, you know, and then triple checking that it's gone off, and then also making sure they had done transactions on it for the next couple of days. Like that's been my biggest peace of mind about controlling money. It's been amazing.
And yeah, that was exactly my next point, Tyler, is that when it comes to controlling spending, obviously security is a huge part of that, because it's a risk, right? As a business, you're giving essentially company money in the hands of employees for them to go out and hopefully do the right thing. And I mean, it can, take one bad actor, I guess, to cost your business hundreds or even thousands of dollars or more, God forbid. So I guess in your mind, what are the kind of unsafe practices that people should be mindful of when, distributing company cards or even, beyond that, even setting up subscriptions, paying bills, all those kinds of things where you've got company money in the hands of your team members, and how can they sort of think about avoiding those pitfalls, I guess?
Mine's sharing cards, and it drives me mental. The amount of people that I know used to have card numbers written down, like on post-it notes on their desk. I had $50,000 limits on these things, and then when something came out of that account, I didn't know who it was from, and I was always chasing to try to chase my tail on that. Like, I didn't have a name, and then eventually 6 years ago, I started to get better about bank feeds. The names came through, like Bree spent this on this feed. I could kind of start to allocate, but that sharing of cards was horrendous. I do think once hotels kill their need for a hard card, I think credit cards and debit cards are just gone. They're out the door.
Yeah,
it's interesting. We have probably one piece of software that we haven't moved to a wheel card, and that's on an Amex. And it takes finance forever working out whose accounts are with what and who has what invoices. It just, it's like a minefield, and then someone leaves and you can't get it out of their account. Just, with Wheel, we don't have any of those issues. For me, it's really when that person leaves, just that peace of mind around knowing that that card is gone, knowing that they haven't saved. As you know, like Google now saves card details.
Yeah.
So, if you have an employee that, might not have left on the best terms, it's that fear of like, have they saved that physical card's information in their private Google?
Yeah.
With Will, I have none of those concerns because I know that the card is cancelled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can very quickly reallocate to a new card if it's, if they're the admin on a software. We don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah, very true.
And you see people, like we used to send messages with card details, which I just think, oh my goodness, so bad.
Yeah.
And I think
so bad.
In a similar vein, being able to just cancel cards for subscriptions has been as well. Just because how many times have we asked, we all decide, let's cancel that subscription, we don't need it anymore. And then a year ticks on and $6,000 just came out. I was like, what was that? But then because we close a subscription card, we know that even if the person forgot to cancel it, the money's not coming out.
I only just got on this. I've been using Wheel for years, and I told Marion from the Wheel team, and she was like, Tyler, what are you doing? Like, subscriptions. And I was like, well, like, I'm going to be around for a while. Most of them are in my name. But then I had one with Adobe, right? And I signed up Adobe for a year package, and they just auto renewed every year. And I bought it as a team because I got this small discount. And then I quickly realized, I was like, I can do month by month on it. I sign up for 12 months and I effectively do month by month, pay the month by month to get the same price. But if that team member decides to leave, I'm not up for another 11 months of transaction costs. I can just cancel that. And that email address is cancelled. And sure, they if they want to find me and invoice me, cool. But like, I'm in control, not they're in control. And that you can still get the discounts, but you can control the movements allocating to people, because you just cannot sign user licenses for a year with ease. That's the big part. And Wheel does that too. Like, I love that Wheel doesn't lock me into a 3-year contract. It's great. Like, I can flex my budgets, cards as I like.
The other thing that we probably haven't touched on is that like fraudulent transactions. We've never had a fraudulent transaction on a Wheel card. 3 weekends ago, someone Airbnb accidentally put through a transaction on someone's card. But we were able to just, we were worried, has someone got that card? We cancelled the Wheel that night on the Saturday night, and then it's fine, Monday reissue a new card, really, really quickly. If that had been with a bank, I would have had to have been on the phone. You know what I mean? I would have had to have sent 7 emails. It's just that, it's harder to get hacked, but it's also, if there is something that looks odd, you can very, very quickly cancel it. You don't have to go through many, you know what I mean, hoops or loops to do that. And I think that also gives me a lot of peace of mind.
For sure, that speed to action, anything that looks sus. I know it's kind of that all those little things that, where money can kind of drip out. You don't realize that subscription that's ticking away in the background that, you didn't realize it's set up, I guess, as well.
It frustrates me because I feel like I'm losing value. I hate getting ripped off. I hate it. It drives me absolutely insane that someone is just pulling money out and I've made the phone call. That feeling of getting, money taken out of your account when it doesn't make sense to you or the business is just annoying. And then, if someone else gets a sniff of it, like I've been judged as a finance leader for not being able to cancel something. I'm like, man, I've made the 5 phone calls. And they're like, maybe you're not a good CFO. Maybe you're not fit up for this. And I'm like, I'm doing
everything I can.
And I'm on hold for an hour. That game change of virtual cards is really cool, and it's the speed at which we can do it, like Bree, your point about that Airbnb stuff, how fast we can move in the market now is so cool. And it's, one of my favorite clients is using the bills function as well. And I don't, but I am quite amazed at the fact that we don't need AP people batching and paying. That is a big, big change for me. Managing expenses is about money going out the door. Now, connecting our banks and our actual payment of bills versus just credit cards is a huge step up. And, also paying out reimbursements, staff getting that money faster. Not only are we better in finance, but also they're like, oh, Tyler's approved that and it's in my bank the next day. That's just elevates everyone's feeling of value and engagement in a company, which is huge. I cannot express that one enough on reimbursements. Suppliers are suppliers, right? That's a good finance time saving. But staff, if you delay a reimbursement, it will make people quit. It's that detailed.
Staff know. Staff notice.
Yeah, they do. Staff notice, good finance.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time, but just quickly, one other thing, and it's not really with security, because talking about people having subscriptions to software and not really thinking about them, because people have to upload their receipts every month if they own the software subscription, they actually think about whether they need that software. It's not something that they don't see. The actual staff member is looking and saying, well, am I using that software every month? Is this something that we can cancel? And that's, something that we've been able to do that, if it had been with an external card and owned by the finance team, we wouldn't have that people thinking around, do we really need this expense?
It
so
becomes
another cool.
Once every 2 years, you might do an audit of your tech hack as opposed to that really regular review.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Something else.
That's actually a good point. I hate uploading receipts. It makes you think. It makes me think. Yeah, it's good. I haven't thought of that.
Watching the money. Cool. As Bree said, we are coming to the end of the session. Unfortunately, due to the technical fault at the start, we don't have a stack of time for Q&A, but if you do have a question you'd like us to answer, please drop it in the chat now and we'll either cover it off now or we can send some answers across after the session. Two sort of bits before we wrap up as well. I do have a quick poll here. We have talked a little bit about Will today. And if you would like to hear more from Will, you should see a little pop-up come up there. Just let us know and we'll reach out. We're always happy to have a chat, obviously obligation free, just see kind of what we do. And the other really bit of exciting news is that we have now officially launched the CFO Awards for 2023. So nominations are now open. You can now nominate a finance legend in your life. So at the conclusion of this webinar, you will be redirected to a screen that has the link to nominate, and we've also dropped it in the chat. and we will share it around with the video recording also. So make sure you get onto that. It was a really amazing night last year. It was really great to recognize all of our unsung heroes in finance. We've got some additional categories this year. We've got a bigger venue. So yeah, it'll be a really fantastic event, which everybody should get around. Okay, I will end the poll there, but thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you so much, Bree, Tyler, and Chloe. You guys are amazing as always. I feel like I could chat to you guys for hours. Unfortunately, we only had a short amount of time together, but really appreciate you guys jumping on, and look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Yeah,
Thanks,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. See you later.
Yeah.